about it later. So I think I'll finish here.
Okay. Who'd like to pick up the first 2 minutes?
Okay, I can pick up the first sentence. Well, yesterday we had a funny discussion. There was basically one guy who asked me if I'm pro or against, and I said I'm against. And he said, so if I kill you, would you be against me having a death penalty? And I said, yes, I would be against you having a death penalty. But then the thought was, what if, I kill your children? And what if something like that happens? And then we have a case in Norway when there is one psychopath who killed 80 teenagers. 80. That's a huge number that one person killed. And I mean, there is no question whether he did it or not. Of course he did it. A lot of people saw it. He doesn't deny it. He's proud to do it. He's obviously crazy. He's obviously a psychopath. But what to do with people like that? What to do with people like that? So there is always there is a number of people who are psychopaths. They're really psychopaths. They don't serve anything in the society. They're obviously not happy anyway. So what to do about people like that? Keep them with other psychopaths together.
Do what?
Keep them with other psychopaths together, or simply.
I think there's there has to be more accountability. If a person flips out and kills, like this person kills, there has to be. What is the root? There has to be something. People are not inherently evil. I don't believe. We don't just wake up one day and decide to kill 80 people. We have to be driven to that point. And I think within the system of justice, there's not really any accountability for culpability of environment to society. We just think of justice as punishment and protection of society, and don't let it happen again.
Angel, can you comment on that, and let's move on to another subject.
Yes, I agree to that. I agree that very often it's society, but I fail to see, even though I agree with John and I'm against the penalty by far, but I cannot see how a society can be a medicine to everybody. And no matter how hard we try, there will be somebody who will flip out or will be born like that. Psychopaths, they have different brains. Like in MRIs, they do show different brain connection between the frontal cortex, where we have the moral, and the other parts. So they actually have less fear, less moral, and they can be good in business, they can be good in execution of different kinds of things, and they have been around the society. But sometimes these kind of people who exist among us, and they don't have the classical, typical emotional response that most of the people do, they can flip out, and they don't have, and what to do about that, I'm just, to me, it's very difficult to answer.
But okay, the person who killed 80 teenagers, if he was put to death, what will change that? I mean, if you don't agree for death penalty, but suddenly you do, you say, for this case I do. So why? I mean, there are the arguments about retribution, or what was it, deterring, that they're not very
definitely
grounded.
In the case of a psychopath, because
psychopaths cannot be deterred from this, right?
From anything.
Right.
So,
But put him in a yes, that's true. But put him in a prison, or put him in a asylum, where he will be fed and live on the money of those parents whose children he killed. To live on the tax money on those people. Well, what is the? Why should he?
I'd like to respond to that. I remember. Now the camera's on me. It feels a lot more weird. I remember when we had talks about this more than a year ago. The trying to come up with an answer. What do we do? So you have the death penalty in some states, or I'm from the United States, or in some countries. In other countries you don't. And usually the highest punishment is life in jail. I remember you mentioning that life in jail is kind of like a death penalty. It's kind of like a death sentence, right? Because you know where you're gonna die. You know
There's no hope.
there's no hope of being let out, and you know it's possible that your health will deteriorate more quickly in jail. So I was trying to figure out what would my solution be, and it was kind of like what you're asking. Do we let the person stay in the jail and be supported by the families of the people who are murdered? So my idea was, it really doesn't work very well, but my idea was that the offender, the murderer, should actually then go to work for the families.
Like a psychopath.
The psychopath would have to go to work for the families, but not directly, not directly, not as if a caretaker for their new children or whatever, but indirectly, like you know, building things or making things to be sold and then giving them money or something like that. I know in there are a lot of problems with that, and in terms of a moral argument, it doesn't really work, because people would be like, you know, first of all, probably disgusted that, well, I don't want any money from that person, or I don't want the soap that I use to be made by my child's killer or something like that. But it seems like if there's going to be retribution, there has to be some payment, and it doesn't seem that payment can come in the form of death. It's not much payment, not much of a payment. Sorry, go ahead.
About culpability, and how do you hold someone accountable to death? There's no accountability in death, right? If you kill them, there's nothing restored. I mean, the act of death itself restores something. But I don't believe that it does. And when you're saying about like getting the offenders to work towards helping the families out in some way, or helping society out in some way, I think that's a great idea. But you know what, the reality of the prison systems I think just about everywhere around the world, they're just really, they're horrible places where you stick a bunch of people in cages, and not only the prisoners go a little bit insane, the prison guards too, and they're all just trying to survive each other. And while the direction comes from above that there should be rehabilitation, there isn't any in effect. I mean, it's making the best of a really terrible situation. And the whole thing's failing right across the board, I think, in terms of justice and rehabilitation. And so I think that's probably part of the reason why such extreme punishments are so popular, because there are no alternatives. Like when people say, "What do we do with the worst of the worst? How do we take care of them? Are we responsible for them? Are they part of society? Should we still care for them even when they flip out and kill 100 people?" And most people would say no. Why? What good are they? They're just useless human beings.
What if the...
Well,
No,
just say something for
a
30
question.
seconds.
Just yeah. What if the murderer refuses to work? No, kill me. I don't want to work. Like,
No
you can
remorse.
face this
They're like,
situation,
you know,
right?
put me in jail, but what else you can do? You can't execute me. Hi, you don't have death penalty. Fuck you.
Or maybe he can refuse.
What else can you do to me? Nothing.
Okay.
I was just going to say in response to Angel's, well, if you call that person or whoever like a psychopath, you actually qualify him as psychologically unable to rationalize, and then he cannot be eligible for the crimes he did. That's how the justice, that's what the law says.
Yes.
So then your argument would be, well, he's not a human being, right? Because like you suggest, okay, how we treat,
Hold on.
how we treat these people. Well, it's you think that murdering or like executing the death penalty over such people should be allowed, and like using the like the word psychopath not as a clinical definition but as a pejorative name for such a person, you know, you basically disqualify him as a human being having the human rights equal as any other human being. And let's say about you also talk about the tax money that goes to feed these people, right? But then, well, think about it, like where do your tax money really go? Your governments buy weapons. They fight wars in countries. So we actually finance wars. You know?
And death.
We don't, and those soldiers, okay, then the assumption is that, oh no, our soldiers are always doing the righteous things. And even though you personally probably wouldn't agree, or you might anyway, like, but there are people who disagree with certain wars that their governments fight, right? But still, you keep on paying the tax and you keep on like supporting, you know, the cycle.
Would you like
So-
to respond? Sorry, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, yes, that is true. That is true that there can be a person who is psychologically impaired, and he was born like that. And apparently there are such. There are many of them in military as well, and that's why there is a case where there is a soldier who goes around and pees on dead civilians' bodies, and that happened quite a few times recently in Afghanistan or in Iraq. So there are people like that everywhere, in every walk of life. Now the problem is how functional they are and the potential danger we can all face. Financing wars from the tax, it is true that this might happen or it happens. However, the official line of reasoning is that the state goes there to defend itself. So they go there to defend themselves. They go there not to kill, not for the purpose to kill, but they go there for the purpose to protect themselves or to protect the locals, etc. So as an argument, as a black and white argument, we cannot use this, I think, to say that my tax money are used to kill people, because that's not why they're there officially, not
No,
to
but
kill people.
technically,
Well,
that's how it ends up.
Well, it ends up, but
There
you
is
know,
no war where
but
people are not killed.
But people die in any way. You know, people go to work, they fall off the building they are building, they die. It's not the company that killed them
but
at the
why
same
should I
time.
Let's have one person talk at a time. Do you wanna
Okay.
respond to that?
No, it's okay.
No, what I was saying
I
is
want
that
you to respond, but let Angel finish.
it's just that people go there not for the purpose of killing, like let's say in Afghanistan war. That's not the official reason. Just like people go to build a house, they don't, and somebody dies. He didn't go there to die. He went there to build a house. In Afghanistan, they went there to defend America from the terrorists. That's the official thing. Of course, we can think about else and debate it, but this is it. This is how it says. However, when it comes to a person who cold-bloodedly goes around and kills people and shoots a few times to make sure that they die, and they're all innocent, we have very clear situation. The situation in Afghanistan is not so clear, or in Iraq, or in any kind of colonial imperialistic war. It's usually not so clear. So we cannot just apply swiftly. All that, I agree with you that happens, but it's just not so clear. But in this case, we have very clear-cut situation about a person who has planned and executed a murder of 80 children, and now what should we do with him?
Okay,
Okay.
Sonia, would you like to respond?
Well, I don't think we can, I was just talking about like where the tax money goes. So the tax money not always go where you don't, where you want. You don't really agree.
Yes.
But comparing this like war and the single case of a psychopath, it's really not comparable. It's not comparable at all, because if you say he's a psychopath, then we should treat him as a psychopath and treat that problem as an like whatever, like medical, sociological, whatever issue. But the assumption is that the war is something else. The result is dead bodies, but so I don't think we can really compare them on on those grounds.
Okay, let's move on to a new topic.
I just want to comment to that.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm thinking like, in a situation like that where there is someone who's been deemed beyond hope, or we don't know how to connect with them, and they're obviously violent, they can't be even around other prisoners. If the alternative is death, I mean, if it's about taxpayers' money, in any society where there's the due process for trial and appeal in a death case is if we give it as much attention as possible, it's going to cost the taxpayer way more money to execute this individual than it is to keep them in a prison. And another thing, I think that when you think about the death penalty and the cost of it, can you imagine if you were working in the prison and you were the executioner, you were the guard that had to bring the prisoner their last meal, and the people that are actually involved in the actual killing of the individual within the prisons, and the cost to them. I've seen one documentary was specifically about that, and over 90% of all of the, even up to the warden, to all the prisoners, they were all the guards. They were all adamantly against the death penalty. You see, I wish our governor would abolish. I wish, and every time another death penalty case came, they dreaded it. There was some individuals that just, they shut down. It's my duty, and they did it because they had that, that type of personality. But most of them were they were broken over it, And I think some of it's got to be irreparable damage to individuals. I mean, if you work in a prison your entire life and you've executed, so many people have been responsible, even though it's, my boss told me to do it. I mean, there are other, I think, far-reaching consequences of death that we don't consider. In the
Somebody like to respond to that? Because that brings me to something else that I was thinking about, maybe onto a different sort of topic. Kind of on a moral, from a moral standpoint, I'm under the impression that there are two basic ways to have morals. I guess an individual can create their own moral system, but it seems to me there are two basic ways. Either somebody gets their morals through their religion, or they don't, I guess. And the other side of that would be the myriad of different ways that people can get their morals without religion. I guess this is maybe partly a question for you, because maybe you've done a lot more research on this. Are the people who are giving, and maybe you don't know because you said you didn't look at the moral side so much, but are the people who are giving the moral argument, are they predominantly religious? Not necessarily.
No, I wouldn't say so,
Not
actually.
necessarily. I guess that was part of your point, that it could be from philosophical or
I
religious,
think
or it could be.
traditionally, actually, the religious
Oh, okay.
arguments are
Usually against.
usually against.
Okay.
For is the moral arguments have been cool and constitutional and.
Well, recently, I think, 20 years ago, I don't know, there was a conference of Buddhist monks about death penalty, and half of them were for death penalty. On that conference. Yeah. So
Yeah, there was a good portion of the world.
yeah, as I said, I mean, they can find support for that in the Buddhist scriptures, for and against.
Their official line was that it's not our business. Like, whatever the state does, we have no business to do this. But a lot of them declared it because it was a specific conference about the death penalty, and a lot of them came out of the closet, I guess, so to speak, and said, "Yeah, we support."
And actually, I forgot to say something about Jesus and Buddha. Actually, I mean, I think we are clear that Jesus and Buddha didn't support death penalty. By the story of Jesus saving the woman who committed adultery by being
He
stoned.
was without sin.
Sorry?
He was without sin cast the first time.
Yes, so it's obviously that he's against death penalty. And Buddha, there is a case like a mass murderer, someone who killed around 1,000 people, and the government was chasing him and to execute him. Buddha took him convinced the government to let him live, and Buddha made him repent and become a better person and non-violent person. So it's obvious that Jesus and Buddha were against that. Then how the scriptures were interpreted, that's another thing.
Okay, would somebody like to respond or bring up another point?
I would.
You have 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, we have people who are responsible for the Holocaust. There were millions of Jews. And not just Jews, gypsies and homosexuals and whatever there was. So they killed such a number of people. And I wouldn't say they were psychopaths. They were normal. They just, like, we are able to suspend certain part of our brain to do this. And they were all of them who were caught were pretty much sentenced to death penalty. Some of them by Israel. When Israel was formed, Israel was chasing all those Nazis.
Yeah,
And yeah, they were killing them. So what should we do about these people? We should pretty much give them a probation, or we have, I mean, and
that's a revenge something,
Yeah.
or protection for the
Clearly
future.
there was, I mean, like, for such an atrocity, there's a huge outcry of, there's a need for some kind of closure.
Mhm.
Something has to be very swift and final. And definitely the Jewish people, they demanded that. You know, they didn't just demand it, they went after it themselves.
yeah.
Like I said, they were executing it at, like, agents running around the world, tracking them down and killing them.
Yeah.
And, but I mean, I think we have to be a little more objective about the way we administer the death penalty, because clearly as human beings we're like, our emotions are off the map, and especially in situations like that, and we're not able to be rational,
Right.
and we cannot follow, you know, the guidelines that we have set out. We always deviate from things, and things get misrepresented, and you know, there's so many holes in the whole procedure that we can't just go from guilt to death. We have a very, very lengthy process by which we have to hang on, and really this whole thing about, like, imagine like the victim's family is waiting 20, 30 years for retribution. And this is what happened in the States, 20, 30 years, there's people are waiting for appeals on death row, and a lot of times, you know, the parents of the victim end up dying during the appeal process. There's no closure. They go through their whole life never getting closure because they're waiting for this ultimate closure of death, which never comes. And a lot of actually inmates, they die of old age on death row. They die of like other diseases, cancer or whatever. They're not well cared for. Imagine living in a cage 23 hours a day. It's probably not the healthiest of environments. But actually, the numbers that are actually sentenced and executed, I'm not talking about the ones that get freed or get cumulative sentences. I'm not exactly sure what the percentage is, but there's a large number that actually never make it to the execution.
Right.
Okay, I think we're going to have to end there. So thank you, everyone.